Hello Ascenders, and welcome to our Journey to Black Belt and Beyond video. Let's get started. Let's begin with the idea of developing the black belt attitude. You probably realize that with a positive attitude, there's almost nothing you can't accomplish. On the other hand, if your attitude is really negative, there's going to be very few things that you can accomplish. So we want to focus this conversation on how we develop the attitude which is going to get us to where we want to go. So black belt attitude is about developing grit. This idea that you do what needs to be done, taking appropriate actions no matter the circumstances, and holding yourself accountable for the actions that you take. I love this definition of grit, courage, resolve, and strength of character. And this idea of grit has come along to replace things like IQ as a predictor for future success. And so there's a lot of scientific research that's been put into this idea of what makes it, what are the predictors for success? What is it that makes somebody have the character to accomplish whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish? And the idea of having a black belt attitude is essentially synonymous with this, because we really want to help people to get to the place that they're trying to get to, and the idea that you're going to persevere no matter what else is going on is going to really be a big part of getting you there. So, black belt attitude, as we build this, it's important to remember that tying the belt on doesn't make you a black belt. So when you get to your black belt ceremony and your instructor ties your black belt on you, there's an important moment when we have to think, I'm a black belt now. But the reality is that you were a black belt before that moment. You had years of training and building yourself, building your best self that helped you to get to that day. And so all of those days that came before were helping you become that black belt. And so there were moments that you were acting like a black belt. There were classes when you were performing like a black belt. And so all of those things helped to build you into that black belt. So it wasn't the belt itself that made you, it was the time that you took building that character. And we have these on our patch, focus, discipline, and confidence. And we talk about this as the ascent cycle because these things are tied together. We believe that as you improve your focus, that is going to increase your discipline. And as you increase your discipline, that's going to build confidence within you. As you have more confidence, your focus is going to improve, and so on in a cyclic manner. And so the idea of focus here is really about paying attention to everything that's going on. What's going on in your surroundings? What actions did you just take? What thoughts preceded those actions? What were your intentions when you took those actions? What are you reacting to? What's the reasoning behind that? What are the excuses that we tell ourselves to allow ourselves to get away with inappropriate actions? All of these things are pieces that we need to know about what's going on so that we can then make modifications and have better outcomes. As we build our discipline, we're going to be able to choose more appropriate actions, more appropriate reactions. The reasoning for taking those actions is going to be better. The thoughts that are in our brain are going to be more positive. And that's going to lead us to greater confidence, because the thing that really sticks with me with confidence is this idea of overcoming fears. So we've all got a lot of uncertainties. We may be feeling embarrassed about certain things. We may be worried about the judgments of others. We may be fearful of making a mistake. You know, we don't hit the board as hard as we can because we're worried about hurting ourselves. So we make a distinction here between pain and harm. A lot of cases, you know, exercise is going to be painful, but it's going to build your muscles, and in the long run, it's not going to harm you. It's going to make you better. On the other hand, if you're doing something that is going to cause you damage to your body, well, we want to avoid that, but we don't necessarily want to be afraid of it. You know, somebody who does a 540 jump spin hook kick or something like that, they've got to train up to that point. So they are risking harming themselves, but they have built the confidence over training over time to feel that, yes, I can successfully accomplish this acrobatic technique. And so as we go through the cycle, we're going to continuously be putting pieces into place that are going to improve our focus, that are going to make our discipline better, that are going to build our confidence. And that way, we're going to feel less that we have to have excuses for things and more that we have justifications for the reason that we chose to take this action. So what do we mean when we're talking about black belt? Getting your black belt, we're usually talking about getting your first degree black belt. And for most people, if they achieve black belt, it will have taken them 3 to 4 years of training. Now, the key here is that black belt is not the end of the line. Some people believe that after 3 or 4 years of training, I'm going to get my black belt and I'm going to be Bruce Lee. Sorry. You're not going to be Bruce Lee. I'm not Bruce Lee. My master has been training for 20 years. He's not Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee dedicated his life to becoming an outstanding martial artist. And that takes years and years of practice, and it's not just something that you do as a hobby. It becomes a lifestyle. So getting your black belt is meant to be an achievable goal for people who have the dedication to put in the time. And so when we look at black belt, it's not going to be looking at a complete house. Some people are thinking like, yeah, I got my black belt, that's the whole thing. No. You got your black belt, you have built the foundation. There's no house there, there's no structure, it's just the foundation. It's a place where we can then begin to develop much more interesting and complicated pieces. Now, when we look at black belts in the ATA, they go all the way up to 9th degree black belt. And to put this into perspective, once you achieve your 1st degree black belt, you must be 1st degree for an entire year before you get your 2nd degree. And then it's 2 years before you can get your 3rd degree, and 3 till you can get your 4th degree, and so on. So when we're talking a 9th degree black belt, it's going to be taking them 40 or more years of continuous training to achieve that goal. So 9th degree black belts are extremely rare. So if you ever hear about somebody who's, I learned under a 13th degree black belt or something crazy like that, they've got a different system or somebody's pulling your leg. In any event, the idea here is that there's much more to achieve beyond black belt. So if you're looking at, yes, black belt is where I'm going, great. As you start to approach that, think, do I want to go further than this? What is there beyond that? This is one of my favorite quotes. A black belt is a white belt that did not quit. We all begin at the same place. Those 9th degree black belts I was just talking about, they started knowing nothing about martial arts, just as we started knowing nothing about martial arts. So where you go is a matter of the choices that you make and the determination to get there. So anybody who has tied on a black belt, they were a white belt once upon a time. They had a lot of the same uncertainties that you did at white belt, and they overcame those things. So we want to use this as kind of a motivational piece to help you remember that if it's possible, that means it's possible for you too. So we get this question all the time. How long does it take the average person to get to black belt? And we kind of joking, but only half jokingly say the average person doesn't make it to black belt, because it does take something special to get to black belt. And the average person doesn't usually have what it takes. And so let's talk about what we mean. So this is the ATA ranking system. You can see over here under the ATA Tigers, there's a ton of tiger belts, and they're all animal prints and animal related. And there's 2 belts for each animal. So on the left-hand side, there's the turtle belt, and on the right-hand side is the Ara belt. And then on the left-hand side is the tiger belt, and then the right-hand side is the Bayo belt. And so this goes back and forth, back and forth. So there's actually 18 different belts in the tiger system. Those belts are all considered some form of white belt. So any tiger, no matter how long they've been training, is technically a lower rank than a standard white belt, even though they may have more skill. The idea there is that we want to have little kids have a place to start without overwhelming them with too much of the martial side of the martial arts. And we want to teach them a lot of life skills. We want to teach them to build that confidence and answer up with a confident voice, to run fast, to say yes, ma'am, yes, sir, yes, mom, yes, dad, whatever it is that they need to say. So we're spending a lot of time on those life skill pieces. And while we do teach them board breaking, we teach them forms, we teach them weapons, the expectation of them is significantly lower because we're also building a ton of coordination, and they're not going to be able to do a lot of the things that an older child will be able to do. Now, when we get into the Karate Kids and the teens and adults, it's essentially the same thing. The white belt has a recommended belt, which has no black stripe, and then the decided belt, which has the white belt with a black stripe, and the orange belt with black stripe, yellow belt with black stripe, etc. So all the plain colored belts are the recommended belts, and all of the black stripe belts are the decided belts. And there's 18 of those as well. And then down at the bottom center, you see this first degree black belt recommended. So this is the last belt, the 19th belt that happens right before a student earns their first degree black belt decided. And so, as we said before, if a student is going to reach their black belt decided, they're going to be training for 3 to 4 years to get there. And then to get their second degree, they have to train for a whole nother year. To get their third degree, they got to train for 2 more years, and then 3 more years to fourth, 4 more years to fifth, and so on. And so each belt is a representation of all of that hard work. And so this is a ton. This is a lot. And when we have students come in the door, they're going to start off as a white belt or a tiger belt, a turtle belt there, and getting to the point where they have put in those years of work to get to that black belt. This is why we say the average person doesn't get to black belt, because the average person doesn't commit to 4 years of training. And so there's a lot of reasons for that, which we're going to get into next. So there are a lot of obstacles that we encounter on our way to black belt and beyond. The very first one is commitment. Progress takes practice, and that practice takes time. And the big thing that everybody is going to run into at some point is this feeling of like, I'm bored. I don't feel like going in today and training. And some of us, unfortunately, are going to come up with this question of, why am I still doing this? I've lost my reason for that. And that's a place where people quit. And so that's a big one, is commitment. Another big one is focus, because there's just a ton of stuff out there to do, and a lot of people are out there trying new things. And so if they're trying a bunch of different things, then focusing on one thing may not be where they're at in their life. And so when students are out doing a ton of different activities, they may be come to a point where they're feeling like, whoa, there's too many activities, I've got to cut something. And if the focus and the priority isn't on martial arts, then the martial arts gets cut, and that will keep them from getting to their black belt. Discipline is the third one. I said earlier, everybody's got that day when they just don't want to. And so the question comes up, what makes you get out of bed and do it that day versus staying in bed? What makes that person feel like a winner versus feeling like a quitter? And there's been a lot of talk in the last few years about the idea of training a quitter, and the idea that we allow our children to quit so many things that they just kind of get in the habit of trying stuff and then quitting. And we want to kind of stem the flow in that direction and make sure that people are choosing appropriate activities, but also we understand that there's an appropriate time for every student to stop taking martial arts. Unless you're Bruce Lee and you're going to dedicate your life to this, everybody's going to get to a place where they're like, yes, I'm done with this now. And the question is, are we going to end it on a very healthy note, or are we going to end it on an unhealthy note? And the distinction I make between that healthy note and unhealthy note is, do I go out feeling like a winner, or do I go out feeling like I just quit another thing? And so I'm growing that quitter mentality. And so the big piece there is to set goals, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Next is support. Nobody gets to black belt on their own. everybody's got some kind of support. Now, whether it's one person that is always rooting for you and helping you get where you need to go, or if it's a whole community of people that are helping you achieve your goals, everybody's got support. Now, my hope and my goal is that my school becomes our school, that it's a place full of people that have the same kinds of goals, and we are all kind of joined together in a common desire to improve ourselves, and so we become community. And that community piece is something that I always want to build. It's the culture of the school, that we're always supportive and we are inclusive of others, and that way it becomes a supportive place. I know I've heard stories about people who dedicated years and years to an activity that they were really in love with, and then it became kind of a toxic environment, and they felt like they had to leave in order to stay healthy. And I never want that to be what's going on at our school. So even if you come in and you feel like, you know, I'm the one person who's really driving this for me, that you're going to find other people there who are going to support you, and they're going to become friends in your life that will be helping you to feel like you're not alone in it. And then the last one, if you're listening to this video in 2022 when I'm recording it, we're just coming out of COVID. So, or I hope we're just coming out of COVID. In any event, COVID was a huge disruptor, and this is why I just said life, okay? Sometimes life happens, and there's going to be a ton of things that may fall into this basket, and we just have to deal with them, and life can cause such a big disruption that even if we really have a strong goal, we might not be able to overcome the life obstacle and continue on to that goal, or we may have to pause and circle back around once we've dealt with it. So COVID was a thing that it hurt our business really badly. I would say we lost at least half of our students, but the reality is the students that stuck with us, we just had our first black belts, and yeah, how did they get there? They stuck with it even through this big, crazy life experience. And those students who were not able to stick with it, they're out doing something else now. So there are a lot of obstacles on the road. However, there are also opportunities. And I think these are opportunities to build systems that are going to help us to be successful. So the one that I want to focus on the most is the idea of building goals. If we know the why, then that drives us to find the how. So if we know why we're trying to get to black belt, then how we get to black belt is going to kind of fall in place. We're going to figure that piece out. If you're getting to that point where you're like, oh, I'm not sure why I'm doing this anymore, then the how is going to be a much tougher obstacle to overcome. Next, we're going to talk about routines. So one of the things that I like to say, if it must get done, it will get done. If it's not a question of whether or not to do it, it's a question of how are we going to do it, then we're going to do it. So if we build that into our routine, this just becomes part of our lifestyle, then we're not asking ourselves, well, do I need to go to train tonight? It's like, no, I must go to train tonight. It's part of my routine. Therefore, I need to figure out how to get there. So if the car breaks down, can I get a ride? You know, oh, I had to stay late at work. Can I still make it to class on time? You know, these are the sorts of things that that we're talking about. And then network, super important. I love this word, accountability buddy. So if you have an accountability buddy, this will help you to overcome the I don't wanna. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to work out at the gym because I knew my buddy was going to be there and I didn't want to let them down. If I didn't know that they were going to be there, I might have given into my lethargy and said, it's okay, I don't have to go today. So that network of people, again, that's part of that support system. This is going to help you to overcome when you don't feel like you don't feel you've got it in yourself to make it happen. And this is no joke. Having that network is going to really help things. So I mentioned wanting to spend some time on goals. So when we're advancing, it's super useful to make goals for our advancement. So we recommend setting goals that are either tied to a belt or tied to a curriculum. So here are the curriculum stages that most people are going to be going through. So we start in the beginner curriculum, usually talking about like orange and yellow belts. We're going to be learning forms in there. We're going to have sparring, which is, we call it safety sparring because it's non-contact. We are going to do board breaking with unlimited number of hits to break the board. We're going to be learning single weapons, single nunchuck, bow staff, and stick. We're going to be learning some personal safety pieces. And then when you get your new belt, you're going to have a promotion because we're watching you in class and we are deciding whether you have made appropriate progress. And so you come and you do your public demonstration and you get your belt. So that's how the beginner curriculum works. So if a student is feeling unmotivated on a day, one of the things that can help them is to say, okay, well, we're going to finish the beginner curriculum. We're going to get up to yellow belt decided, and then we're going to reassess. So if you have that goal, it's going to be one of those things where it's like, today I don't feel like going to class, but I've got that goal to get my yellow belt decided. Okay, I'm going to go and do it because it's going to help me make progress towards my goal. So for the first year, most students are going to stick in the beginner curriculum. The second year of training, we're looking at intermediate curriculum, and this is mostly camo belts and green belts, camo and green recommended, and camo and green decided. So similarly, we do our forms. The forms get a little bit longer as we go into camo and green. We start doing sparring with contact, so you get your sparring gear, so people are going to actually be punching and kicking you. Light contact, we like to say. Board breakings are going to be more complicated. We're going to teach you new techniques to break the board, but it's still unlimited strikes. You can hit the board as many times as you need to break it. We're going to do weapons. We're going to start to do double weapons. We're going to continue to do personal safety, and your belt promotion is going to continue to be a promotion. You do your demonstration in class and you get your belt. So these are things that can help people be motivated to get out of the beginner curriculum and continue through the intermediate curriculum. So maybe somebody's really interested in sparring, or they love the idea of doing double nunchucks, or they just love the idea of getting to their green belt. These are all things that can be set up as goals to help keep students motivated and training through those difficult times. And then for the third year of curriculum, the advanced curriculum, we're talking about purple, blue, brown, red, and red-black belts. So we're going to be doing forms and sparring and board breaking like before, but they're a little bit different because the forms are going to be longer. The sparring is going to be contact sparring like we had before, but the board breaks, we're going to be going for a single hit. So you want to break the board with one shot. And all of these pieces go into the testing. So you see here forms you can get from 0 to 5 points, sparring is from 0 to 3, and board breaking is from 0 to 2. The maximum number of points there is 10 points. So to get a passing score at the testing, you have to get 7 out of 10 points. And so each of those things is tested on the day of testing and not decided during the curriculum while you're in class. We're still going to do double weapons, though we will learn new tricks. And then weapons can become a bonus modifier. If your weapons are super awesome, you might get a +1 to your score at testing. If your weapons are weak, you might get a -1. Similarly, when we do our personal safety, as you demonstrate the personal safety drills, you might get a +1 if they're really awesome, or a -1 if they're weak. So these are things that can be modifiers to that 7 out of 10 scoring to get that passing score. But in any event, all of these pieces are things that can be used to help motivate students to, again, to get past that boredom or to get past that piece where they don't feel like coming that day. And the boredom I say because it takes a lot of repetition. If you want to do a really good form, you got to do that form many, many times. And the average kid thinks that once they've memorized the moves, they're done. And to get advanced, to get past that, you have to learn that it's not just about doing the move. It's about making the move effective, making it strong, making it fast, making it crisp. So all of these are things that you need to practice beyond memorization to get to. And some students really struggle with that because they're like, I don't understand why I'm continuing to do this form. I've learned it already. But you're not performing it properly. Now it's to get it into the place where it's going to be an effective technique. Now it's to get it to a place where it's competitive if you're interested in doing tournaments and things like that. So being able to get past that and have these little tidbits that are kind of dangling out there as bait to lure you on and to help you get past that piece where you might feeling down on one day, these are super important. The next topic is about routine, and I like this routine adulting because it really is about being the adult. Whether you're a grown-up student or the parent of a younger student, or both, you must be the adult in the relationship and make sure that stuff gets done. So first of all, we need to set a priority. If you have decided you're going for black belt or you're going for second degree black belt, it's got to be a priority, which means it's got to be on the list, it's got to be on the calendar, it's got to be in your schedule. However you are going to do it, it's got to be there somewhere. Because if it's kind of like, well, I'm not sure, then it's probably going to fall off the list. It's going to slip out of the calendar and it's not going to get done. And if it doesn't get done, then you're not going to reach the goal. And so at some point, maybe not today, we definitely don't expect students, especially when they're brand new, to be setting up a goal of black belt. But we do want you to be setting goals along the way. But at some point, if you're going to get to your black belt, it's got to become a priority. It's not a question anymore. It's decided. The next part of that is communicating the expectation. So especially if you're a parent, you need to explain what needs to be done. We're going to build the anticipation and the understanding of what needs to be done. So we do this, for example, with our Rising Star cards. We give the sheets to the parents. We often say, hey, go practice this. So in my household, the expectation is when I shout, Jasmine, she comes to where I am. She says, yes, Dad, on the way. And so I know she's heard me, and she comes to where I am so we can have a conversation. So I practiced that with her, and not in a time when it was important that it was done properly. So I didn't do it when it was like, oh, we got to get out of the house right now. This is when we're practicing. No, I practiced it on the weekends when we had hours of nothing special to do. And it was like, okay, so we're going to practice this 5 or 10 times so that she knows exactly how to do it. And if there was anything like, hey, you didn't shout, yes, Dad, so I wasn't sure if you had heard me, then we practice that. Okay, next time, as soon as you hear me, you shout, yes, Dad, and then you run to where I'm at. Or if it was like, oh, yes, Dad, I'll be there in a minute. No, that's not what this is. I shout your name, you come immediately. Whatever it is, you drop it. Or, if you cannot come immediately, you let me know. I can't, I'm on the potty, something like that. But while we're practicing, all of those distractions shouldn't be an issue, and so it should be something where they can just practice over and over and over again, get a lot of success, and then it's like, yeah, there we go. We know what to do. We know what the expectations are and how to enact those. So this actually it actually covers quite a bit of the build routine piece. Know what the steps are, and we have to make it so. And this is how we do it. So another example here is when we're getting ready to leave to go to the dojon, my alarm goes off and everybody knows, okay, the alarm goes off, it's time to load the car. Everybody knows there's a specific way we put all the stuff in the car so that we know it's all going to fit. We want to be on the road at a certain time so that we're not running late. So all of these things are pieces that we've put into place and we've practiced enough that it's not a question anymore. So I know with parents, especially of small kids, come on, get your shoes on, especially if you've got more than one kid, trying to wrangle them like, oh, this person had their shoes on, and then while I was trying to get the second kid's shoes on, the first kid took his shoes off so he could go potty. And, 30 minutes later, we're all in the car finally. And so building those routines and practicing those routines can be a place where the the strain of making this stuff happen becomes less, so that you're much more likely to achieve the goal. All right, the next part is delivering consequence. So how will you win the battle, and how will you celebrate the success? So when you're fighting your kid, I know a lot of parents who say, you know, I just can't fight my kids on this. And it's like, okay, I understand that. You can't fight your kids on this, you're going to lose. So the question then becomes, well, what if losing isn't an option? How do we win without making them lose? How do we celebrate when they are successful? So is it always just like, get your shoes on, I told you 15 times? Or is it like, boom, you got your shoes on super quick, nice job? Most kids are going to love that positive feedback, and even if it's something as mundane as getting your shoes on so that you're ready to walk out the door and get in the car so we can be to the place on time, they're going to crave that positive feedback, and they're going to be really happy to hear that they're doing a good job, which is going to train them to get their shoes on faster so that they can get that praise. Next, we're talking about network for success. So you may be wondering who's on your team. I think probably a lot of you already know many of the people who are on your team, but let's go over this anyway. So the Morrows, we're your coaches. We're here to help you find the way. Hopefully you've already heard this before, but if not, then now you know. We trained as a family for a long time before it became our business. So we've been through the I don't feel like it today. We've been through the let's get it done anyway. We've all achieved our second-degree black belt. If we haven't seen it, we know someone who has. So if you're butting up against some problems that you're not 100% sure how to handle, come talk to us. We are on your team. We're happy to assist. Your classmates are going to be a super big part of this. Your friends, your family. Hopefully you're going to meet people on this journey that are going to be a huge resource for you. They are here for many of the same reasons you are here. And so many of the students that are in the class that you're taking, or in the class that your kids are taking, the parents in those classes, they know what you're going through because they're going through the same stuff. So we are trying to build that culture and that community where everybody feels like, yeah, I'm comfortable getting to know other people and talking to them to help me with their ideas and to help them with my ideas. And then competitors. The thing that is important to know here is most black belts went to tournaments, and they got into the competitive side of the martial arts. And so when we're talking about tournaments, for me, there's a whole group of people that were my tournament pals. So people from Canada, people from Idaho, people from Washington. I didn't see them normally at other functions, but when tournaments came around and I was traveling to Washington for tournaments, or they're coming down to Oregon for tournaments, I would see them there, and they became part of that support network. Some of you may find that enemies are going to be your support network because you're like, oh, I'm going to get that guy. I'm going to beat that gal next time. And that drives you to train. And as it drives you to train for the competition, it helps to elevate you along in your path to achieving your goals. So don't underestimate the power of competition. Yes, the drive to overcome has built empires, and that other thing being it has destroyed empires as well. So hopefully you see how these things can help to overcome the obstacles. The whole idea of prioritization and setting goals will help with commitment and with focus, because those goals will help answer that question of why we're doing this, and will help answer the question of what is the thing I really need to spend my time on, or what is the thing I really want to spend my time on. So similarly, building that routine is going to help with that focus and with the discipline. There are some people who say that you don't need very much discipline if you've got a goal, because once you've set that goal, once it's become part of your routine, you're not constantly putting energy into it. It just becomes an automatic thing. You don't constantly have to think about, oh, I've got to do this thing. It's like, nope, it's just part of my routine. I do it every day. And then that network, again, is going to help with the discipline because it's going to help you want to go to class, and it's going to help with that support because you're not going to feel alone in this. Now, all of these things are going to combine to help with life, but remember, sometimes life wins and we just can't figure that out for a while. We have a good friend of ours who is an employee at Kaiser ATA. He came up through the ranks, through the color belt ranks with Master Carson Clues, who is my master. And life happened, and he went away for 12 years and did other things, and then came back and started doing martial arts again. And one of the things he constantly says is like, oh man, you know, he just got his 4th degree black belt, so congratulations to Ruben Gould. But one of the things he says is like, whoa, if I hadn't gone away for 12 years, I'd be a master already, because Master Clues was the same rank at one point as Mr. Gould. And so it's just one of those things where, you know, sometimes life happens and sometimes it brings you back around. You just got to kind of roll with it. But the more we've got these other pieces in play, the less likely those life challenges are going to derail your progress. So this next section is about black belt homework. The true journey to black belt will change your life. So for those of you who want to really get to black belt and really go beyond that, it's not going to happen in just a couple of days a week for most of you. Most of you are going to need to dedicate some time outside of class to continue your training. I love this quote from Marcus Aurelius. He lived a couple thousand years ago. He said, if you don't have a consistent goal in life, you can't live it in a consistent way. And so I ask you, what is your goal? Because whatever your goal is, it's going to drive you to become yourself every day in everything you do. And so if your goal is to become a green belt, great. Let that drive you to become that green belt. If your goal is higher than that, if your goal is to become black belt or 2nd degree black belt, if your goal is to become an instructor, if your goal is to own a school one day, let that drive you, because those big goals that we hold, the goal to go to college, the goal to graduate from high school, the goal to, you know, get a car, the goal to get a job, all of these things help to define who we are, and they will often touch on all of the different decisions we make each day. Am I going to play Super Mario Brothers, or am I going to run through my form first? You know, these kinds of things. So having those goals are going to be super important. And it's not just about what happens in the dojo. It's not just about what happens in our classes. It's about what happens each day at home, all the things that you're doing. How do those help you to achieve your goals? Or are you doing things that are making it more difficult to achieve your goals? Combating the kids. I said this before, how can you win without beating them? This is a super important piece because, as I mentioned before, if you're in this place where you feel like I'm fighting my kids all the time, and I don't want to be fighting my kids all the time, then we're having a problem. So we need to find strategies to help us be successful while the kids are successful as well. So we want to try to find that win-win situation. And so there's a bunch of different things that come up here, and we're going to get into those in just a second. But I want to make sure that we understand that what I'm talking about here is you're the adult. So you have to be the adult. If this is something that's important to you, if the martial arts training is important, then we need to find those ways to help the kids feel that it's important to them as well. So we're all going to hear this. I know, because I've got a 2nd degree black belt daughter who said, I don't wanna. Everybody encounters this at some point. And so part of this is taught through that idea of black belt attitude. It's not about whether you wanna, it's about something else. So 2 of the big pieces are about goals and results. So goals are super important because you can touch on those in those moments of I don't wanna and say, hey, do you remember we agreed we were going to get to this level? Well, this is what it takes. It takes going to class even though you don't wanna. And this is going to teach them responsibility. We had a deal. That deal needs to be fulfilled. This is how responsibility, this is how honor, this is how good people behave. So all of these things can be tied into, we set a goal, we're going to achieve that goal, and at the time when we achieve that goal, we will then reevaluate that. And the reality is, I don't wanna is usually an in the moment kind of thing. Not always, but usually it's an in the moment kind of thing, and by the time you've reached the goal, the reason why they felt I don't wanna isn't valid anymore, because that moment came and went, they came to class, they had a great time, and they reached the goal and they felt really good about themselves. And so because that made them feel good about themselves, they're going to want to continue. Not always, again, but for most of the time, that's how we have experienced it. The results piece is about reminding them of the awesome feelings that they've had in the past, and then anticipating having those good feelings again in the future. So this was very effective for me when it came up in my family, and Jasmine was like, I don't want to go to class tonight. It wasn't that she didn't want to make progress toward her goal, it's just that she didn't feel like it then. She was tired, she'd done another activity or whatever, and so we said, hey, do you remember going to class last week? And she's like, yeah. Well, how'd you feel after class? Were you happy that you went? And she was like, yeah, I was happy that I went. I said, okay, so do you think you're going to be happy if you go tonight? She's like, well, probably. I said, okay, so let's go to class tonight, even if we don't feel like going. Let's go, and then we'll check in after class and see how we felt. And sure enough, we went to class, we had a good time, we felt good because we had a good workout, so the endorphins were flowing, and we checked in on the ride home, how'd you feel? I felt great. So remember that next time that you feel like you don't want to go, you're gonna be glad you went. And so after having this conversation, I don't know, half a dozen times or so, it stopped being a conversation that we needed to have because it became part of the automatic routine. She knew, she had internalized this idea that going to class was going to make her feel good. And so she automatically overcame that feeling of I don't wanna because I'm tired, because I'm doing something else. And it became something that was part of her overcoming obstacles. It was a tool in her belt to help that. The third piece is about tactics. Parents, it's super important to be tactical with your kids. It's super important to be smarter than your kids and more clever than your kids and more sneaky than your kids. It's super important to use all of your vast experience, which they don't have yet, to manipulate them into doing what you want. And I say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but also a little bit seriously, because there are some things that just need to be done, and you need to win. So, for example, my daughter didn't like brushing her teeth. That wasn't something that I could allow to be a thing. I had to make her understand brushing her teeth was required. It wasn't a question, it wasn't an option, it was mandatory. And so it had to be done. When it came to eating her vegetables, it was usually not a problem, but we had a rule in our house, you have to at least take a good healthy bite and try it before you tell me that you don't like it. Also, you don't have to eat it, but I'm not responsible for making you more food. So this is what we made for dinner. If you don't want to eat it, that's okay. If you want to make yourself something, that's okay too. So we had these rules, and there were pieces of them that were inflexible, but there were other places where there were options, and that was built in so that she could feel that she had some authority and some control over her life. And it's surprising how often a student will feel empowered by being given that choice, even if all of the choices are determined by the adult. So, for example, do you want to play baseball or do you want to go to martial arts? You don't have to do both, but you have to do one of them. You can't sit around and play video games all day. And so it's like, oh, well, if I'm given the choice, now I feel empowered and I'm going to pick one. And then they're going to fight you less on that. Another thing that's super important to remember is, what are they doing when you ask them to get ready? So we've had this a whole bunch of times, and we've found some really good success in overcoming this. A lot of times parents will find like, oh, my kid is on the tablet, they're playing video games, they're reading their favorite book, they're outside playing with their friends. And then I say, hey, it's time to go to karate. And they say, I don't wanna. Well, why would they wanna? They're in the middle of something. And so what we have advised parents to do is like, okay, so if they're going to class at 4 o'clock, then 3 o'clock is chore time. 3 o'clock is doing the dishes. 3 o'clock is making the bed, doing the laundry. It's whatever kind of something that isn't super pleasant, and so they're gonna want to get out of it. And so if the alternative is unpleasant, then they don't want to choose that. So it's like, oh, well, I suppose you can stay here and do dishes, or you can get ready to go to karate. Oh, yeah, I want to go to martial arts. Yeah, I'll finish the dishes later. So those are ways that you can kind of make it important. So if you have decided that martial arts is important for your child, find ways that you can be tactical about making them want to do it. And then similarly, what are the rewards for going to martial arts? What are the rewards for doing the things that you want them to do? And so, for us, when it was, brush your teeth time, for doing a good job and doing it quickly, we would do reading at bedtime sort of thing. And it was like, okay, well, I can't read to you until you've brushed your teeth. And so if there are rewards built in, if we're being tactical about what the options are and making sure that we're not interrupting their fun time, then we can be much more successful at getting them to do the things we want them to do. If you have questions, please ask us. We are here to help. And there are a ton of scenarios that are going to arise, and we have lots of experience helping families kind of find their way through these things. So there's way more than I can cover in one slideshow. But like I've said before, we know a lot of people who know a lot of families, other people in the business. So there are lots of resources out there to assist you if you have questions that you're not sure how to tackle on your own. And as you can see, we're always kind of lurking about. So if you need anything, please don't hesitate to ask. We're here to help. Remember, an ascent is a journey to your highest potential. So whether your potential is going to bring you to camouflage belt or brown belt, first degree black belt or ninth degree black belt, it's going to be an incredible journey. So make lots of memories. And when you do get to your first degree black belt, we'll put a whole book together showing your entire trip. All right, that's it for this video. Remember, at Ascent Martial Arts, we change lives.